The Galactic Council chamber was silent for the first time in many cycles. Thousands of alien delegates sat in their glowing seats, watching a red signal blink again and again on the central holoscreen. It was coming from the Sol system, a small blue planet on the outer rim. Earth. The message was short, only 4 words, but it froze the entire room. "Do not approach Earth," it said. At first, no one believed it. The Council had seen threats before, entire empires trying to sound dangerous to keep others away. But this one was different. The signal carried strange energy, old and heavy, like it had been transmitted through time itself. The linguists confirmed it was Terran, an old human dialect. The military laughed, saying humans were primitive, their world barely industrial. Commander Varn of the Jatel Empire stood up, his armor shimmering under the light. He slammed his clawed hand against the desk and said, "They are nothing but savages. The Council wastes time." Laughter echoed around the chamber, cold and confident. Only one alien stayed silent. Elder Threx, an ancient scholar with silver eyes. He leaned forward and whispered, "You fools do not understand what a death world means." The laughter stopped. "Explain," demanded the Council leader, her voice trembling slightly. Threx sighed, his voice cracking. Earth was once labeled as a forbidden planet, not because it lacked life, but because it had too much of it. He looked around, his expression dark. That world breeds survivors, not soldiers. It breeds monsters with compassion. The others shook their heads, dismissing him. "Old myths," Commander Varn growled. "You let fear guide you." Threx only looked at the blinking red light and whispered, "I have seen what happens when humanity is ignored." Despite the warning, the Council approved the operation. They called it Operation Dawn, a peaceful contact mission. But everyone knew it was an invasion. Hundreds of ships prepared for launch, their engines burning like suns. The armada stretched across the void, banners of dozens of empires shining proudly. To them, Earth was a backwater world, easy to conquer. As the fleet moved through the stars, their leaders broadcast speeches about unity, victory, and progress. But in the shadows of the chamber, Elder Threx watched in silence, whispering to himself, "You have sealed your fate." When the ships entered Earth's orbit, the planet looked calm, blue and green under the light of its star. No orbital defenses, no visible fleets, only silent oceans and white clouds drifting slowly. Commander Varn smirked. "Primitive indeed," he said. He gave the order to begin descent, but before the first dropships entered the atmosphere, the communications officer shouted, "Sir, we are receiving something." A signal appeared on their screen, the same 4 words repeated again and again, "Do not approach Earth." Then the message changed. One more line appeared. "This is your final warning." Commander Varn laughed again. "Let them warn, we will answer." His ship entered the atmosphere, cutting through the clouds like a spear of light. The sensors showed cities, empty roads, no movement, no sign of resistance. It was too easy, but then something strange happened. The instruments began to flicker, lights dimming, the communication channels filled with static. "Interference," said the technician, "but it's not from the planet." The static grew louder, deeper, almost like a growl. Then a voice broke through, human and calm. "We warned you," it said. Before anyone could react, the entire fleet's systems went dark. Engines shut down, weapons locked, power drained. In orbit, thousands of ships floated helplessly as if the stars themselves had frozen. Varn screamed orders, but his words were lost in chaos. Outside the window, something moved in the blackness. Massive shapes, metallic and silent. For a moment it looked like mountains rising from the oceans. But then the sensors flickered one last time, showing something impossible. Hundreds of colossal machines emerging from the sea, each carrying the same symbol. A broken circle around a star, the mark of Earth, the comms filled with terrified voices. "They are activating something. Weapons detected. It's coming toward us." Then the fleet's transmissions cut off, one by one. Elder Threx stood in the council chamber, his old hands trembling, watching the signals disappear. A cold silence filled the room. Someone whispered, "Where are they?" No one answered. Hours passed and only static remained. Then a single transmission appeared on the main screen. It was faint, broken by static and fear. A voice, alien, desperate, gasped, "They were waiting for us." The sound of metal tearing, screams and explosions followed, then silence. The council chamber dimmed to darkness, only the red light blinking slowly. Elder Threx turned to the others, his eyes empty. "I told you," he said quietly. "You should never wake what sleeps on a death world." The council tried to contact the fleet again. No response, no energy readings, no debris. It was as if the armada had vanished from existence, and then, just as they prepared to close the case, the red light blinked one last time. The system translated the message, a single word repeating over and over. "Run." And for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council obeyed. The Galactic Council hall was filled with fear and confusion. No one dared to speak loudly. The disappearance of the invasion fleet had shaken every empire, every alliance, every ruler. 1,000 ships, gone without a trace. No wreckage, no distress beacons, nothing but silence. The only clue left was that single word message. "Run." Elder Threx stood before the council once again, his frail hands gripping the table. "I warned you," he said softly. "The Deathworlders are not to be disturbed." But Commander Varn's second-in-command, Admiral Krex, refused to accept defeat. He slammed his metallic fist on the table, his voice booming across the chamber. "Our fleets do not vanish into ghosts," he said. "Something happened, and we will find out what." The council agreed, though fear showed in every voice. A smaller fleet was formed, made up of reconnaissance ships and elite stealth craft. Their mission was to approach Earth quietly, gather evidence, and return. No engagement, no aggression. Just observation. The new fleet launched within a week, disappearing into hyperspace. As they left, Elder Threx whispered under his breath, "You go not to observe, but to vanish as well." The journey to Earth was calm. The stars shimmered like silent watchers. Admiral Krex stood on the bridge of his ship, the Resolute, watching the planet grow larger on the screen. Earth looked peaceful, harmless. Blue oceans, green lands, soft clouds. "Nothing special," Krex said with a bitter smile. But deep inside, unease grew. He ordered all systems to silent mode. No transmissions, no signals. The fleet entered orbit, cloaked and cautious. "Scan for energy readings," Krex commanded. The sensors lit up with strange data. Beneath the oceans, something was moving. Large, metallic masses, synchronized, alive. "They are not natural," the science officer whispered. "It's like machines." Krex frowned. "Machines? How big?" The officer swallowed. "Bigger than our cruisers, maybe as large as cities." The admiral felt a chill run through his scales. "Begin recording," he ordered. "We take this to the council." But then one of the scouts reported strange interference. "Sir, something is jamming us," she said, her voice tense. Krex turned. "From the surface?" She nodded. "Yes, and it's spreading." Within seconds, the communication systems flickered. Screens dimmed, power surged, alarms blared. Then, one by one, the ships began to lose control. "Reboot the core!" Krex shouted. "Sir, it's not responding." The ship shuddered, as if something enormous had brushed past it. "Visuals!" he barked. The screens flickered, showing black water churning violently. Then something rose from the depths, a massive construct of metal and light, ancient yet alive. It looked almost human in design, but scaled beyond comprehension. Symbols glowed across its surface. The same mark the first fleet had seen, a circle broken by a star. The creature machine lifted its head, its eyes glowing red, and then it looked up, straight at them, through the orbit, through the clouds, through the void. Every sensor screamed warnings, energy spikes beyond measurable limits. Krex froze, whispering, "It can see us." Before the fleet could react, beams of pure light erupted from the oceans. They pierced the sky, hitting the ships even through their cloaks. One by one, vessels exploded silently, swallowed by the blue planet's glow. The Resolute shook violently, systems collapsing. Krex tried to send a distress signal, but all he heard was static. And then, a voice, calm and human. "We told you not to come." The Admiral's eyes widened, his last thought filled with disbelief. How are they still alive?" Then the ship's hull melted like wax, vanishing into nothingness. Hours later in the Council's observation room, the last data transmission was received. It was heavily corrupted, full of noise, but a few frames remained. A massive human structure rising from the ocean, surrounded by storms, and a human voice repeating one sentence again and again. They were waiting for us. Elder Threx watched the footage in silence. He turned to the Council and said, "Now you understand. They didn't destroy your fleets out of rage, they destroyed them because you refused to listen." The Council chamber trembled with murmurs, some crying, some whispering. "What are they?" one delegate asked. Threx's voice was cold and calm. "They are what we created when we made fear itself a species." The Council's leader stood, her voice shaking. "Then what do we do now?" Threx closed his eyes and replied, "Pray they do not wake the others." But deep in the void, across the silent stars, unknown signals began to spread. Old Terran frequencies, messages from places long forgotten. They carried coordinates, activation codes, and one terrifying phrase. "The Guardians are rising." And for the first time, the galaxy realized Earth was never alone. It was only sleeping, waiting for the day they would need to remind the stars why the galaxy once feared humanity. The Council chamber was darker now, filled with the smell of fear and silence. No one laughed anymore. No one called humans primitive. The Second Fleet was gone, erased from existence like the first. All that remained were broken transmissions, human voices echoing across the void. "We told you not to come." Elder Threx stood before the high table, his voice soft but steady. "You have awakened something that should have never been touched," he said. The Council leader, pale and shaking, replied, "What are we facing, Elder? What is Earth hiding?" Threx closed his eyes for a moment, remembering old records long buried in archives. "It is not what they are hiding," he said quietly. "It is what they were before." The lights dimmed as he projected a hollow map across the room. Stars and ancient battlefields filled the air. "These are records from before our time," Threx explained. "Back when the stars were young." He pointed at a cluster of dead systems, their suns darkened, their planets shattered. This was the Great Cleansing War, 10,000 years ago, when an unknown enemy tried to erase all life. The Council watched in horror as the projections showed ships, massive armadas, and strange. They came from the outer edges of the galaxy, spreading destruction like a plague. "But who stopped them?" someone asked. Threx turned his gaze toward the blue sphere glowing softly in the center of the map. "Earth. The humans," he said. Gasps filled the chamber. "They were the ones who ended the war," Threx continued. "But at a cost so terrible, they vanished from history." The Council leader frowned. "That cannot be. Humans are young." Threx shook his head. "No, they are not. Their civilization was ancient long before ours began. They fought, they bled, and they won. But when the war ended, they erased themselves from galactic memory." "Why would they do that?" someone whispered. Threx looked up. "Because they saw what power does, and they feared themselves." The Council fell silent again. Outside, in the cold dark of space, strange things began to happen. Ships near Earth reported seeing flashes of light beneath the clouds. Satellites recorded massive energy spikes deep underground. It was as if the planet itself was awakening. Admiral Krex's black box, recovered by scavengers on a distant moon, was brought before the Council. Technicians played the final recording. A voice came through the static, calm and human. "Protocol rebirth initiated. Guardian units awakening." The Council members froze. Threx's eyes widened, his old voice trembling. "The Guardians. They still exist." Across the galaxy, strange signals appeared. Old Terran codes transmitted to forgotten coordinates. On dead moons and abandoned stations, buried machines stirred from the dust. Huge constructs with glowing red eyes powered up after thousands of years. Their armor still bore the same symbol. A broken circle around a star, the mark of Earth's ancient fleets. Within days, star systems near Earth began to go dark. Entire communication networks collapsed. Patrol ships sent to investigate never returned. Some survivors claimed to see massive shadow-like vessels moving silent. Tilly between stars, others spoke of whispers through the static. Human voices reciting ancient battle hymns. The council called an emergency meeting. Panic echoed through the hall as empires accused each other of hiding the truth. "Shut down the gates," one shouted. "Seal the hyperlanes near Sol." "It's too late," Threx said quietly. "They are already awake." He pointed at the holoscreen showing the spiral arms of the galaxy. Tiny red marks began spreading outward from Earth like veins of fire. "They are activating their defense grid," Threx explained. "The old human war network." A young council member spoke in fear. "But why are they doing this? We didn't attack them, we only wanted to—" Threx interrupted, his voice cold. "You invaded their home, twice, and called them weak." He looked around. "Now they are showing you what weakness looks like in their language." As the council argued, a deep vibration shook the chamber. Lights flickered, holoscreens turned red, and an unfamiliar signal hijacked the council's network. The room went silent. Then a voice, calm, human, and filled with authority, echoed through every speaker. "We asked for peace," it said, "but you mistook silence for fear." A pause, then the voice continued. "The Guardians have risen, and balance will be restored." The chamber filled with static, and the message ended. Every delegate sat frozen. Outside, the stars themselves seemed to pulse as Terran ships appeared across the sector, dark, silent, unstoppable. They did not send warnings this time, they simply moved, methodical and calm, erasing every weapon aimed toward Earth. Elder Threx lowered his head and whispered, "The awakening has begun." He looked at the terrified faces around him. "Pray they remember mercy," he said, because he knew the truth. Humanity's real strength was never in their weapons. It was in their will, their patience, and their ability to forgive only after they destroyed what threatened peace. And now, the galaxy would learn that lesson again. The Deathworld had awakened, and this time, the stars themselves trembled. The council chamber no longer glowed with the proud light of unity. Now it was dim, cold, and filled with the quiet sound of fear. Holoscreens flickered red, showing the same dreadful message again and again. Balance will be restored. Outside the great windows, the galaxy's heart burned. Entire fleets had gone silent, their lights fading one by one. No one dared to speak for several minutes. Finally, the council leader whispered, "We must surrender." Elder Threx shook his head slowly. "Surrender is useless when you have already been forgiven." She looked at him in disbelief. "Forgiven?" Threx nodded, his old eyes shining with sadness. "The humans are not attacking out of hate. They are correcting what they see as imbalance." Across the stars, Terran dreadnoughts drifted like silent giants. Their hulls shimmered black and silver, their movements slow but deliberate. They did not send ultimatums, they did not speak. They simply erased threats with cold precision. One alien world after another watched their war fleets vanish into white light, not through destruction, but through disintegration. Silent, efficient, final. On the Council's war screens, hundreds of planets went dark. Communication networks failed as Terran signals overrode every channel. The words "Do not provoke Deathworlders" again appeared in every known language. And then, nothing but static. In a desperate attempt to restore order, the Council launched Operation Shield, a last defense of combined galactic forces. 5,000 ships from 30 species, they gathered in the Arctis sector, a heavily fortified region filled with defense satellites. Their plan was simple: stand together and show humanity they would not bow. But when the humans came, all plans became meaningless. At first, the void was quiet. Then, a pulse rippled through space. The say. Tars seemed to dim as shadows formed. Terran ships appeared without sound. Vast, triangular constructs moving like predators in the dark. Each vessel larger than a moon, its surface covered in living metal. They did not use hyperspace gates. They simply appeared, no one knew how. Admiral Relar of the Drunok Empire, commander of Operation Shield, stood on his bridge trembling. He shouted, "All weapons fire!" Thousands of plasma bolts, rail cannons, and missiles filled the void. The stars lit up with color. But when the light faded, the Terran ships still moved forward, untouched. Every shot had vanished into nothingness, absorbed by invisible fields. Then, one of the human ships turned its front toward them. A beam of white light expanded from its core, wide and calm like dawn breaking, and when it faded, half the defending armada was gone. Relar screamed in despair. "Retreat! Retreat!" But there was no escape. Human dreadnoughts moved like ghosts, cutting through space faster than sensors could track. The second half of the fleet vanished in moments. No explosions, no debris, just silence. From his place in the council chamber, Elder Threx watched it all. He whispered to himself, "This is not war. This is remembrance." The council leader turned to him, tears in her eyes. "Why remembrance?" Threx replied, "Because this is how they ended the last war 10,000 years ago, with no hate, only sorrow." Moments later, the chamber lights dimmed. The council's own defense network was failing. A human voice filled the air again, calm and almost gentle. "You attacked the children of Earth, twice, despite every warning. We did not seek your worlds. We did not seek revenge. But peace demands memory, and memory demands justice." The leader fell to her knees, whispering, "Please, stop." But the voice continued, "The galaxy will not be punished, only taught, and then taught." The message changed, repeating endlessly across every known signal, "Remember Earth?" Outside, the council's homeworld shook as the sky turned silver. Terran ships hovered above the capital, silent and immense. No weapons fired, no troops landed. Instead, thousands of small drones descended, projecting holographic images into the air. They showed the faces of humans, men, women, children. They spoke in every language. "We do not seek to rule," the message said. "We only remind the stars that peace is not weakness." Elder Threx stood among the glowing lights, tears streaming down his face. "They could have destroyed us," he said softly, "but they didn't." The council leader looked up at the images, her voice shaking. "What do they want from us?" Threx smiled sadly. "Nothing, only understanding." Then the human ships began to withdraw. One by one, they vanished into the void, leaving no trace. The skies cleared, the static faded, and for the first time in history, the galaxy was quiet. Too quiet. The council members looked at one another, broken and humbled, their empires in ruins, their pride shattered. They had learned that strength without compassion was hollow, and that mercy from a death world was the most terrifying gift of all. As Elder Threx walked out of the chamber, he whispered to himself, "They ignored every warning, and now they understand why the galaxy fears Earth." The galaxy was silent for the first time in 1,000 years. No fleets moved, no empires plotted, no worlds burned. Only quiet stars watched over the ruins of pride and the birth of understanding. The great Galactic Council no longer ruled from its shining towers. Most of its chambers now stood empty, filled only with dust and memories. Elder Threx sat alone near the observation window, watching the dark expanse of space. Once, he had feared the humans like everyone else, but now he felt only respect. They had come like ghosts, struck like lightning, and left like wind. No occupation, no conquest, no demands. Just a message that echoed forever. Remember Earth. Months passed, and slowly, the survivors began to rebuild. But this time, things were different. Instead of power, they spoke of peace. Instead of pride, they spoke of balance. And in the middle of it all, one blue planet stood untouched. Earth, a symbol of strength and restraint. Rumors spread across the stars about human ships helping fallen worlds. Terran engineers rebuilding destroyed colonies. Terran doctors healing alien children poisoned by radiation. Where once came destruction, now came hope. And yet, every species that saw them trembled in silence, because behind those calm human smiles, everyone knew what they were capable of. A year after the fall of the Council, a new fleet approached Earth, not an army, but a delegation of peace. At its head was Captain Alera of the Varnathi, one of the few who had survived the Council's fall. Her ship descended slowly through the clouds, greeted by blue skies and quiet oceans. The world looked alive, beautiful, and peaceful. It was hard to believe this planet had once erased two fleets from existence. As Alara stepped onto the surface, she was surprised. No soldiers waited for her, no weapons pointed at her. Only a group of humans stood before her, dressed in simple uniforms, smiling warmly. One of them, an older man with gray hair and calm eyes, walked forward. "Welcome to Earth," he said, his voice steady but kind. Alara bowed her head. "I come in peace," she whispered. The man smiled. "That's all we ever wanted." He introduced himself as Commander Elias Grant, a representative of the Terran Peace Network. As they walked through the open fields near the landing site, Alara saw no walls, no fortresses, only cities full of life, full of laughter, humans and aliens walking side by side, trading, helping, learning. This is not what I expected," Alara said softly. Elias chuckled, "because the galaxy remembers our anger but forgets our heart." They stopped near a great monument made of silver stone. At its center glowed the same symbol, a broken circle around a star. Alara touched it gently. "What does it mean?" she asked. Elias looked at it for a long time before answering. "It means that once humanity broke itself to protect others," he said, "and now we rebuild what we once lost." For the first time, Alara understood humans were not gods, not monsters. They were survivors who had seen too much pain and refused to let it happen again, and yet when threatened, they became the very storm that once saved the stars. Back in the new Galactic Assembly, formed under the name the Accord of Worlds, the old council seats were replaced by empty ones. One chair in the center was reserved for Earth. No human sat there. Instead, a hologram shimmered above it, displaying the words, "Peace through strength, compassion through power." Across the galaxy, people began to live differently. War was no longer a game of pride, but a memory of terror. Children studied the Terran lesson, learning about the old Deathworlders who warned the stars. Every new leader took an oath. Never again will arrogance lead us into darkness. And though humanity rarely spoke, their presence was felt everywhere. They were the quiet guardians of the galaxy, watching, protecting, guiding. Elder Threx, now very old, recorded his final words before his passing. "Once we called Earth a death world," he said softly, "but we were wrong." He smiled faintly, his eyes full of peace. "It is not a death world," he whispered. "It is a cradle of impossible life, the place where mercy learned to be stronger than fear." And as his message ended, his voice carried across the stars. Every world listened in silence. Every ruler lowered their head. Every child looked up at the night sky and wondered what it would be like to stand on that blue planet, that had changed everything. The galaxy would never forget. They ignored every warning and learned the truth too late. That humanity was never weak, never cruel, never reckless, only patient. And now, as the stars shone brighter than ever, the universe whispered in awe. The Deathworlders brought peace, and the galaxy itself fears to break it again. Oh.